NDTV World has been covering the Sri Lankan elections on ground from Colombo, getting you all the big voices, covering all the issues that matter. And to talk about AKD, the phenomena that he has emerged in these elections is Harini Amarasuriya, who's a member of parliament in Sri Lanka and a member of the national executive of NPP, AKD's party. Thank you so much, ma'am, for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you for having me.
Ma'am, this is an election where, while we've been doing only Colombo-centric, getting a feed of what's happening on ground, but the one name that keeps resonating again and again is AKD. My first question to you, ma'am, is how would you respond to the support that has come for your party leader in these elections?
I think it's a result of I think this moment has to be really understood correctly in Sri Lanka. This is no ordinary election. Whereas this is the first election we are facing since the economic crisis and also since the uprising, the citizens' uprising, popularly known as the Aragalaya. And that turned up sort of traditional political space into something else where people are demanding much more than just a change of a political party, a deeper transformation. And AKD in many ways represents that transformation, the desire of the people of this country for something more than just what happens during an election in other times. And that is why he's emerged as the front runner at this election, because he represents many of the many of the feelings, many of the demands that emerged out of the Aragalaya, a different political culture, a more just society, a more responsive government, more citizen engagement, more space for citizen engagement. So he represents all of this.
But what is the issue, according to you, on which this election is being fought on? Because, if I spoke to some of the other candidates as well and to experts on ground, and the sense one gets is while economy is a major issue, economic recovery in the last 2 years is another factor. The fact that, that Sri Lanka has come back from the brink in the last 2 years. So, in your assessment, in your party's assessment, what are the two, three key issues on which Sri Lanka is going to vote?
I think the key issue this time for voting, yes, the economy is a huge issue, but people recognize or want to understand better why the economic crisis took place in the first place, right? Why did this happen in this country? And I think there's a lot of discussion around the need for a political reform. That if we are to fix the economy, if we are to recover in a sustainable way, then we need to deal with corruption, we need to deal with nepotism, we need to deal with a political system that is out of touch with people. That these issues need to be resolved if we are to sustainably build the economy. So you cannot sort of separate the two issues, the political reform plus the economic reform as in this election. That's why these two will go together. So yes, people are wanting relief from their day-to-day issues on the rising cost of living, the health and education crisis. But more and more people recognize that the cause of this has to be addressed and not just sort of a ad hoc kind of approach that just merely looks at it in terms of relief, while the system that created this economic crisis remains intact.
Then, let me ask you about the economic policies. The biggest criticism or the other side, so to say, has been that NPP may be talking about something too utopian, but it may not have an economic policy that backs it. How do you respond to that
No, I mean,
criticism?
I don't think that's true at all. Obviously, we've talked about our economic policy very openly for a long time, and I think our opponents kind of keep saying the same thing over and over again, as if, but they don't really engage with the substance of it, right? So, what are we talking about? We are talking about continuing with the debt restructuring process. We're talking about what needs to happen to get the economy out of recession, which we think is extremely important. And we're talking about stronger social protection measures, right? And we are talking about rooting out corruption so that we can actually attract the kind of investments and create the kind of private sector which will help our economy grow. So I don't see what's so utopian about that. Those are things that are essential for our economic recovery. It's essential for balancing our budget. It's essential for sustaining our macroeconomic stability.
The one voter demographic that is solidly behind AKD is the young male voter. And the question I ask you is that what has got this young male voter or the young voters hooked to the AKD plank? Is it jobs? Is it employment? And if so, then what is your party's plan to increase employment, get those jobs going?
I would say it's the young voter and it's the female voter that is strongly behind AKD at the moment. And I think it's because we're touching on AKD is the only candidate who's seriously addressed both women and the youth demography in this election. A, by talking about the burden that women have faced as the main sort of victims of this economic crisis and the need to provide quick relief for that in terms of ensuring food security, dealing with health and education. Then for the youth, the youth have felt disillusioned about this country, that there's no hope of transformation. AKD has provided hope. I think that's the biggest issue, that this country can be fixed and that the youth have a role to play in that transformation. I think that's really resonated with young people. So whether it's in terms of education, whether it's in terms of generating employment, all of these issues, I think really resonate with the young. What he's done is really inspired people to believe in this country again and the belief that transformation is possible.
My final two questions to you, Harini, is one is I have to ask you this that sitting in New Delhi, some of the election rhetoric that comes in, you may take it with a pinch of salt, but the fact is, what is AKD's idea in terms of the India Sri Lanka relationship? And what does he feel about Colombo's future ties with New Delhi and, of course, also with Beijing?
He had a very successful visit to India a few months ago. We are conscious of India's position in the world and India's ambitions uh, in terms of how it sees itself in the world. And India is our closest neighbor, right? So we are sensitive to India's concerns about maintaining regional security and also positioning itself as a global leader. So we want to work closely with India. We look forward to working closely with India, and we think that um, sort of the fact that we will be creating systems that make it possible for Indian investors, for Indian tourists
So
to
you're
be
okay with Indian investments, Indian investors,
absolutely,
Indian businesses coming
absolutely,
and getting investments here, creating jobs, which is the main issue for you?
absolutely. What we are saying is we will set up procedures for transparent, accountable, and corruption-free uh, procedures for investors to come in. And we invite Indian investors who are interested in working with us to come in and invest. Procedures have to be followed. We want to ensure that there's a corruption-free climate for investors. We want to be transparent in how we select our investors and how we work with investors. And as long as the interests of the investors align with our agenda for development, I don't see any problem.
All right, Harini, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV and taking out the time. And I wish you and your party the very best in these elections and also look forward to engagement for India and Sri Lanka going forward.
Thank you very much.